is Talk of the Town, and we're going to spend a little bit of time here today talking about retirement. I know as a lot of our viewers are in or entering retirement, we wonder if we're going to have enough money and really how to plan for that. Well, you're in luck because we have an expert sitting on the couch with us today. Steve Gaito with Retirement Resource Management is joining us. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to see you.
Lot to chat about today. This is a huge topic, but let's discuss this a little bit because we do have viewers who ask these kinds of questions all the time about, are they going to need to work longer, save more money? What's retirement going to look like?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your thoughts.
Yeah, the reality is the number one fear in retirement is running out of money.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times the traditional approach to how you address that is to, you need to save more, work longer, or get a higher rate of return. Well, we know the higher rate of return is just smoke and mirrors. It solves the problem on paper, but seldom does it solve it in reality. And I just finished doing some training on some new software that I got that really opened my eyes. It was talking about how your budget impacts everything. If you will dial in your budget, you really can create a spending plan that everything else is based upon. And the more time you spend on understanding where you're spending money, the easier it is to plan and efficiently use your resources.
It is interesting because we do spend so much time thinking about that money coming in and hoping for a higher rate of return and thinking about savings, but what an impact you're saying just budgeting the right way can be and being efficient with that budget. So let's talk a little bit about some ways that you can help us plan for that, help us really stop and just take note of that.
Yeah. So I mentioned the software. One of the neat things about software is it really dials in and shows you the difference between kind of what people say, how much do you need in retirement? I get that question all the time, and that's the hardest question to answer. And they may say, I think I spend, $7,000 a month. And you're like, okay, let's dial that down, because if I use $7,000 a month, 9 times out of 10, you're going to run out of money somewhere between 80 and 100. And that's not a good thing. But if we dial down and look at the specifics within that budget, a lot of people are carrying mortgages into retirement. Well, if that's $2,000 of your $7,000, it only goes on for the next 5 years. Well, that expense doesn't get carried on through all of retirement. So a lot of times people travel. That's a big thing, and I encourage that. That's part of the go-go years of retirement. So you have go-go years where you're out there doing things with your kids, you're doing things with the grandkids, you're traveling with your friends. Those are great times, but then they slow down. Mm-hmm. And so if your budget reflects that slowdown in spending and travel and all of that, it's also amazing how much longer your money will last.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that the budget itself isn't a document that stays and is a plan that is forever. It's really something that you work with clients on fine-tuning, making adjustments. And how do you do that? How do you help us with that?
So I capture kind of a template. It's your base plan. And that's really where all the planning begins with. So if I know you're spending money in these categories, we may say, is this really necessary? If things aren't working, can we trim any of these? And that's hard these days with inflation doing what it's doing. So then it becomes, how do we want to address each one of them? What decisions can we make for income that can meet those that isn't subject to a drop in the market? People have been frustrated because they've seen their retirement portfolio drop and correspondingly their income drops. Well, if the plan is done properly and you've met all the expenses with there, you don't have to worry about what the market does.
Right.
And that's a piece that people really look for in retirement. And being able to track that on an ongoing basis is so important. So, when we're doing that annual review, or you're just worried, I've gotten all kinds of phone calls about banks. Are banks solvent? Yes, the banks are mostly solvent. And, as long as you don't have more than $250,000 in any one bank, you're going to be fine. But there's fear that's there. But more than if they know that all that budget is funded, just like it was when you had a paycheck coming in, there's a calmness and a comfort that comes from that.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned too, budgeting and portfolios are two very different things. And
Absolutely.
If you budget right, maybe you won't be so reliant and nervous about what your portfolio is
Absolutely.
doing.
And I had no idea when I named my company Retirement Resource Management that it would really be about helping people understand their budget first.
Right.
Because that's what drives every other decision. And until, I think it was my first computer science class I took, garbage in equals garbage out.
There you go.
And so the more you understand what goes into your budget, the easier it is to efficiently plan that isn't going to be subject to all the variables that are out there.
Absolutely. Smart thinking. Well, thank you, Steve, for sharing a few of your thoughts.
Thank
Always
you.
goes so fast. Nice to
does.
see you.
Good to see you.
You're watching Talk of the Town.